Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask the Experts podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of mental health and business growth. Today, I am thrilled to have with us Lori Vann. Lori is a renowned mental health expert, business coach. She's the founder of Vann Wellness Group and the Institute of Non-Suicidal Self Injury. Lori has 25 years of clinical counseling experience, 10 years of coaching professionals to scale their business. And Lori blends clinical strategies with business insights. Get ready to unlock your success and welcome to the show, Lori.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to start by asking you, can you share your story? What is the idea, the initiative behind Van Wellness Group and the Institute of Non-Suicidal Self Injury? How did this transpire, this initiative that you created?
Well, the Van Wellness comes from just, decades of experience and working inpatient psychiatric, outpatient psychiatric. Have done internships at state hospitals, and then went into full-time private practice in 2008. And throughout that time, a good clinician is always learning and
Mhm.
came across that realization that nutrition really is medicinal, exercise is medicinal, sleep is medicinal, and it wasn't being addressed in the counseling world. So Van Wellness came from just this decades worth of knowledge culminating into, you know what? I want to have a place where that's a focus, where in
Mhm.
addressing the mental health, we are addressing some of the things that are the underpinnings of it. The Institute came from, probably about 26 years of experience just working with non-suicidal self-injury and feeling this great need in the community to bring about free and low-cost resources and just education about this international epidemic. So
Mm.
5 years ago, I had a business coach that said, you have put together so much information, you have so many media interviews, you have so many resources, the books you've written, it really needs to be separated and put into the Institute. And so that's what I did, and just continuing to try to grow its reach to turn the tide on this epidemic.
Absolutely. And you touched upon it is an epidemic and it is rather unfortunate, with individuals going through the non-suicide. I mean, the case, in fact, COVID, where the impact of, individuals' health and wellness, that was the first and foremost. Can you share also how the COVID, that period, was a very difficult transition for most?
I say with COVID, there's obviously a lot of problems. There's a lot of horrible things that came from it, but there were some
Mhm.
silver linings, interestingly enough. One of the silver linings is that I believe people started to take back control over their health and they
Mhm.
decided to make health changes. So that's obviously a huge positive, in addition to just the education that became more readily available of the role of nutrition and the role of all of these other more holistic things as preventative care.
Mhm.
In the self-injury part, that was the very sad thing because the statistics did increase. Uh, we had a mental health epidemic in the United States, and I would dare say in probably a lot of the world prior to COVID. I often said we already had a dumpster fire, but with COVID and lockdowns, we added napalm to that
Right.
dumpster fire, and it
Mhm.
exploded.
Yes.
Now, the silver lining is that more people sought out mental health treatment during that time period than I had ever seen in my decades of experience. That we
Wow.
started to have more conversations
Hmm.
about mental health. We started to try to destigmatize it. And obviously those are very, very positive things.
Exactly. No, that's beautiful. I love hearing, what came out of it. So when you talk about the non-suicidal, let's talk about that approach, the non-suicidal, the Institute of Non-Suicidal Self-Injury. What can you walk us through the demographics of your patients? How old are they? You
Yeah.
know,
Well, and I think it's starting with some of the misunderstanding of non-suicidal self-injury that one, it's not suicide, very, different situation there.
okay.
There's 36 different forms I've cataloged of it. It's more than just cutting, burning, scratching, picking. There's so much more. It is in males and females both. And that for the demographic, age-wise specifically, it does start in early childhood, or it can, and it absolutely can start in adulthood. This is
Hmm.
not just this teenage thing that we've often
Right.
characterized it
Hmm.
of.
Hmm.
In my population, when I've charted the stats, at least 10% started at 18 or older. And
Oh,
I've had
wow.
many individuals in their 30s or 40s or 50s that was their age of onset. And then I have also had, very sadly, individuals that were in early elementary school, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 year olds that started to engage in injury. So that's one thing I always like to really emphasize is it's not this teenage only situation.
Right. Well, you're right, because that's what we are made to hear about, that it is teenagers that go through the situation. But you mentioned it starts with elementary children at a very young age. Also, I'm just curious as to what happens to in elementary. How do they start to cause a self-injury to themselves? Like what happens? Is it at home? Walk us through the steps. Like what happens?
There are a lot of variables that may contribute to the early onset of the behavior. It can be everything from maybe they had a sibling or a older friend that engaged in it, so they heard
Mhm.
about it. It can be a history of trauma. That's probably one of the strongest correlations I've seen. History of some kind of abuse has taken place.
Mhm.
There is the role of the media, and I do believe that that is a factor that Hollywood cannot shy away from their responsibility in contributing to it. It's not just a social media piece, which, I mean, that can be a factor, but throughout the media, whether that's TV, cartoons, videos, music, there's so many references to self-injury that on the surface, we don't always pick it up, but it's planting a seed. And I could
Right.
list so many examples of that in the media that a child picks up on that. And then
Mhm.
a final factor is sometimes it's truly accidental. And what I mean is that a child might be very upset, emotional, there's a lot of stuff going on, and they have an accident. Like literally, they are just not paying attention and they walk into a piece of furniture. Or let's say that uh, I don't know. It'd be a little young for them to start shaving, but maybe, some individuals start to shave at 9 or 10. We have precocious puberty, is what it's called,
Right. Uh-huh.
and they aren't paying attention. They accidentally nick themselves, and in that moment, they go like, "There's the
Mhm.
initial like, ouch," but then there's the that actually didn't feel bad. That
Right.
that got my brain off of the emotions for a bit.
For a
It
bit.
grounded them in the present. And so it really is truly just accidental, but now there's that idea that's formed in their head of like, hey, maybe this is another way to cope.
Ah, yeah, absolutely, yes. So, with your 25 years of clinical counseling experience, um, what is the number one overlooked factor that makes your mental health, the practice more practical. So what is the number one that's overlooked when it comes to in your practice for, the 25 years that you've been counseling? What have you seen that's
Well,
overlooked?
if it's overlooked in the self-injury piece of it,
Uh-huh.
it's the assumptions. It's the assumption of it's not my kid. It's the assumption of, well, they're too young to do that. It's the
Hmm.
assumption of, well, that's just a teenage girl thing. There's so many assumptions. And
Assumption.
so the lack of education or understanding is really the big risk factor for it. And a level of denial. There's, a lot of shame and stigma that goes with it too. The overlap on the general mental health piece is the thought of, well, but that's for someone else. And that's fine for someone else, but I think I'm holding it together well enough. I don't need a hospital, so therefore I'm not in need of mental health services. And the problem that I've seen is that people's denial about their stress load and how it builds and how it is impacting their friends and family members and their workplace performance. And they wait till it gets to a point where it's a tipping point, basically, where either their mind or their body or both are going to say, done, that's it. And I saw that happen when I worked inpatient psychiatric, that individuals that had no genetic history, which one, we don't really know how much mental health is genetic or not versus it being environmental, uh, to that they had no prior episodes of major depression or panic disorder, that there's nothing that was in there other than there was prolonged stress, prolonged chronic stress that just took a toll on their mind and body. And it did eventually lead into them needing a higher level of care for their symptoms.
Wow, that is interesting. And so I'm curious, what is a tipping point for an individual? I mean, everyone, it varies, but I'm just curious, what is that tipping point for most?
It really is a case by case basis. Some people
Right.
have a much higher level of
Mhm.
tolerance or resiliency versus others. There's a There's a very interesting piece that those that have had maybe not the easiest life growing up, but they were able to find healthy coping skills or ways to work through
Right.
it, they have
Yes.
a higher level of resiliency. And it's because when you go through difficult times, you build understanding of how to cope. And again, hopefully it's healthy coping skills, but you work through it. I had a friend in college had said that he felt sorry for this one particular girl because on the surface it looked like she had the charmed life,
Hmm.
that she hadn't lost any grandparents. She had, made it to this wonderful university that we attended. Everything on the surface looked like it was really good. And his comment came from, because I gave him sort of a side eye, like, what are you talking about? And he explained it that because she, to our knowledge, had never had any real difficult times, no known bullying or other such, that when life does deal her the blow, which it does to everyone, she's not going to have the same level of coping and resiliency as
Right.
the rest of us that had already started to pay our dues
Right.
and built that same level of tolerance. So that was a very interesting way to see it. And it's not that we should seek out trauma or we should seek out getting bullied or any horrible things, but maybe it's a way to reframe it that when we do experience those things, to see it as an opportunity for growth.
Absolutely, 100%. What's the one practical business strategy you would recommend to mental health professionals and mental health professionals who are struggling to scale the business? I can imagine it's not easy being a healthcare professional, but just walk us through what are those strategies that you would recommend?
Well, and for context, I mean, over the 18 years in full-time private practice, I grew it
Yeah.
from just my single little office and just me. And then I took on an intern, and then I took on the second office and the suite, and then I took on the third, and then
Wow.
moved to a bigger location the second time. And then now I'm in my third location and I have half the building. And now I'm at the point I'm like, I think I'm ready to downsize some. It's sort of been there, done that. And plus, just
Uh-huh.
some of my different business ventures now just don't require me to have a lot of space. For the AI, it's just, I just need me to do
Right.
that. For some of the
Uh-huh.
other things, the speaking business, I just need it to be me. Um, but the one piece of advice that I most consistently give to mental health providers when they're considering being an entrepreneur or they've been doing it for a while is to get business coaching.
Right. Yes.
There's so many
Uh-huh.
things that I go, what if? And I don't usually do a what if, but when I speak to other counselors, they say, if I had had a business coach from day one, the number of mistakes I would have avoided,
Right.
the
Yes.
amount of money I would have saved, because so
Uh-huh.
often we see it as an expense. And no, it's an investment in your business.
Right.
And I do think of so many lessons that I have gained from getting
Uh-huh.
business coaching.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, really the probably close to $20,000 or more of money that I wasted on marketing and advertising that did not work because I didn't know the questions to ask to
Right.
vet
Uh-huh.
those. And then once I started to get business coaching, I started to ask a lot more questions and not take things at face value. So that would be probably my number one.
Uh-huh.
And number two is network. Don't
Network. Yeah.
hide in your office. You've got to get out there and meet other people.
Exactly. I mean, first of all, what we don't know is what we don't know. We have to have the knowledge, the know-how, and having a coach is going to get you to where you want to go. So absolutely a network because you want to get known. If that's a business you want to get into, the healthcare professional, absolutely. So let's talk about the non-suicidal injury. Can you define what it is and what's the biggest myth that you want to debunk?
I like to keep definitions pretty simple.
Hmm.
So, how I define non-suicidal self-injury, it's the intentional, and that's the really key word right there is intentional infliction of injury on one's body, usually for emotional reasons,
Hmm.
but with no suicide uh, intent behind it. And so, as I said, intent is really key because that separates self injury from suicide,
Right.
or self injury from an accident, or self injury from disordered eating. So, that's the quick definition. And the one thing that I like to convey, the myth, one of the top myths that I like to get rid of is that people, and this goes for professionals too. I have had professionals say this, that they go, well, it's attention seeking. No, it's not. It's, and any professional that you come across that's their response of, well, they're just doing it for attention, go elsewhere. It shows a complete lack of understanding of this behavior and honestly, a very dangerous risk too, because that kind of statement actually increases the risk for someone to attempt suicide. Because at that point, they're probably going to shut down. They're not going to talk to that provider anymore. They're more likely to just never seek out treatment again, which then becomes a risk of the suicidal thoughts may increase because of that. Uh, there's just so many problems that can go with it and a lot of
Hmm.
risk factors. So I recently, or somewhat recently, I believe I've recorded some 1 minute snippets on the Institute for NSSI Instagram and TikTok, where I'm trying to dispel these common myths or try to provide tips, coping skills. Uh, and that's just, those are free resources for
Yeah.
individuals that are seeking a better understanding.
Exactly. Talk about the dangers. You just mentioned the dangers, why it's dangerous if um, you ignore whether the individual is seeking the attention. Because oftentimes, yes, they are seeking attention, but maybe the wrong reason. But if we don't acknowledge, talk to us about the danger. Why is it dangerous? And what happens to that individual if we don't acknowledge in their headspace what is happening at that moment?
Yes. Well, I'd say first, instead of intention seeking, maybe we really want to look at it as connection seeking. And they
Connection
do not
seeking.
know how else to seek that connection.
Mhm.
And there's a variety of reasons why, but they feel like that's their last option. That's what they have to resort to in order to get whatever needs being met. When we ignore self-injury or we say the wrong things that make someone shut down, the reality is that over 65% of those that engage in self-injury have suicidal ideation,
Oh.
if not a good percentage of those having done gestures or attempts at suicide. Self-injury, at some point, the risk factor is that it's no longer going to work. It's no longer going to be the alternative. And when that happens, the risk of going to suicide increases significantly. And that's why I often say suicide prevention starts with self-injury identification and prevention.
Hmm.
Suicide is unfortunately commonplace in the United States. Our stats are terrible.
Wow.
We recently had two celebrities. Well, one was a celebrity, one was a child of a celebrity that completed suicide within this last week.
Oh, wow.
One of them had a history of bipolar disorder. The
Hmm.
other one, I do not know the history for that particular celebrity's child. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers go with their families because suicide is an absolutely devastating thing to do for friends and family members. There's so much that they're going to need support to navigate this time period. And I have no idea if either one of those individuals had a history of injury. I have no idea whatsoever. But
Hmm.
what we do know statistic wise is that those that engage in injury are a significant risk for it to go to suicide. And if we don't treat the injury, and when the injury is no longer sufficing to deal with those emotions, suicide becomes the risk factor.
Wow. So that's just the next option. And that is um, very interesting to hear. And it is very high, especially in the States. Also, what comes to mind, and I'm just very curious to also learn more about non-suicidal injury and what happens and how we can prevent. Would you also say in your expertise, it starts when children are lonely? That loneliness can kill anybody, whether you're an adult or a child. Would you say loneliness, if we don't deal, it's how individuals are at school at that moment and what happens in their progression of life in general. Would you say that's also a trigger mechanism to, for suicide?
Yeah. Loneliness is a factor. So when people start to isolate, they pull away,
Yeah.
that's one of the symptoms that goes with major depressive disorder. In addition, or something that's related to it, is the
Mhm.
decrease in pleasure. So if someone used to play a sport, they used to do games and activities, were involved in social groups, and then all of a sudden they pull away and they're no longer doing it, and they just don't have a pleasure for those
Yeah.
things, what we call anhedonia. That's another symptom of depression. And so, if they're no longer participating in social outlets and they're isolating in that loneliness, that does become a risk factor because we get alone with our own thoughts and our thoughts tend to go bad places.
Yeah.
There is a recent video I recorded that is on the Instagram and TikTok that talks about nighttime in particular. because at night, the symptoms often do feel worse because we're in a bedroom, it's dark outside, we are physically more isolated from individuals. And when we're in a room by ourselves at night, man, those thoughts can get going. And that becomes a risk factor for injury or on the suicidal part. And that has been so consistent with individuals that I've served throughout the decades. At any time, it can happen during the daytime too if they're isolating in their room and their room is the door is closed. That
Right.
again, those thoughts can get going.
They sure can. So it's the withdrawal. They tend to withdraw themselves, and that's
Mhm.
that's when that happens. The isolation, that's really bad. Let's talk about sustainable wellness. And sustainable wellness to me, it is a buzzword, right? It's a buzzword, but how do you define sustainable wellness, and what types should we, what types should individuals or organizations look out for?
So sustainable wellness, it's yes, it can be that buzzword, and there's a lot of buzzwords in the holistic space now. But I mean, I think it's just breaking it down, just exactly what it sounds like. It's not just a short-term plan. It's not oh, I'm just going to get better while I take this blood work test from my doctor. It's a mindset of I'm putting things in place that are
Mm,
thinking long term. So, yes, immediate short-term benefits, but I'm thinking the long game. I want to know what do I need to do on a daily basis to improve my odds to make whatever age range that you're wanting to. For myself, yeah, I'm thinking 105. Like it's completely feasible. There's not a reason that I can't make it to 105, but I have been putting things in place to better the odds that I
yeah.
don't develop a chronic health condition. And
Mhm.
those are things in physical activity, sleep, social outlets, nutrition, checking mindset. It's all of these different factors. And I would also say the spiritual, there's something I call a trifecta of self-care, and that is the sustainable piece. Exercise, sleep, and nutrition. And I say there's two side parts there, the psychological, social, and spiritual. And
Right.
there's tons of research on the spiritual aspect because people that are spiritual, especially if they're involved in a religious organization, they
Mhm.
tend to be more optimistic and they tend to be more social. They aren't cut off from the rest of the world. And we see the impact that that has on us psychologically and physiologically.
Right, exactly. That is so true. The spiritual side plays an important role. So let's talk about for entrepreneurs and coaches, for entrepreneurs who want to get into the profession, the healthcare profession, and how can they prevent from burnout? Because we see a lot of the healthcare professionals, nurses, they do go through a lot of burnout. So for entrepreneurs and coaches listening, what advice would you give from not preventing burnout?
It's a great question. And I have worked with entrepreneurs on the burnout. I've worked with different corporations internationally on burnout prevention because, as a note, if you're a business and you have employees, you really want to focus in on this part because if you have employees that get burnt out, you go into short-term disability, which means that you are one person less doing the same workload, which puts more stress on everyone else that is there, which increases their burnout risk. And that increases mistakes being made, and mistakes are costly for your reputation and to redo things. But burnout prevention as an entrepreneur, because it's a very real thing,
Hmm.
especially early on, we feel like we have to do it all. I've been
Right.
guilty of that. I had a coach said you cannot be the chief bottle washer, cook, and everything else. You've got to delegate.
Right. Yeah.
And I still have to remind myself of that sometimes. Um, that and done is better than perfect. I have heard that
That
many
is true.
times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's being more attuned to your body, which I know sounds very cheesy and very new agey, but your body will give you the signals.
Hmm.
We have to stop and listen to it. Where are we holding tension in our body? Is it in the neck? Is it in the shoulders? Are we losing our neck because our shoulders are so high up from the tension?
Right.
Are we having vision problems? Are we having stomach issues? Do we have GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder? There's so many physical manifestations of stress. And we are so quick in this world to just pop a pill to make the symptom go away, but we're not addressing the root issue. And that's
Hmm.
dangerous because that goes back to it's a matter of time before your mind or body go, done. That's it. And that is burnout. And it is much more difficult to come back from burnout. It will cost you a lot more time and money to do that than if you were just proactive and you take the 15-minute break here. If you stop to make sure that you're eating something healthy and not fast food, if you take 15 minutes just to do some stretching, it's little things, really little small things that add up and that you make sure that you don't isolate yourself in your office, that you are going out to a business luncheon or a business networking event to be social. All those little things really add up to create more of a long-term plan for your business's health. And, well, frankly, your business's health is tied to your health.
Exactly, exactly. Your health is the number one priority, and we got to listen. That is so, I love that. You got to listen to your body. And I'm also guilty of that, delegation. As entrepreneurs, we don't want to delegate. We want to do everything. We want to do it because we know how to do it. So I agree with you 100%. You got to delegate. So I'm also guilty of that. So let's switch gears. What advice would you give for for entrepreneurs also who want to establish, the authority in their healthcare professionals? They want to establish authority. So, what advice would you give to those individuals who want to get into that space, the healthcare space, and because they want to have the authority and to be also to impact, um, you know, patients?
So it's actually a couple of different things because you do need to have some level of experience before you can call yourself an authority. You can't go out day one and go like, "Oh, I'm an authority." I didn't have that. I didn't claim that title until someone actually gave it to me on the self-injury piece. When people started to call me the authority, then I started to use that for my branding. Uh,
Okay, so what makes
but
you the authority? What makes an individual the authority? Do they have to go through exams, or what do they have to
it's
do?
I think it's a mix of things. I don't think life experience alone qualifies you as an authority to give advice for other people.
Okay.
I've seen that in coaching a lot where people's only criteria is that they went through it themselves. So therefore, they feel that whatever they
They're an
say is going to be
expert.
helpful for others.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case and actually is a little bit dangerous. I stayed away from the world of coaching for a long time because that's whenever I came across a coach, that's what I encountered. And I'm like, oof, that's shady. I want no part of it.
Right. Yeah.
Coaching is very legitimate, but everyone needs to vet the experience and training of that individual. So part of the things that go with authority, and there are different timelines, expert versus authority. I do believe that you need to have some years under your belt of directly working with multiple cases, not just like 10. I'm talking like, give me in the hundreds of individuals you've actually worked with and helped. Show me your data. Show me that you've actually created improvement in their lives.
Right.
Um, those would be the beginning steps. Show me your level of training. Is this just all in your head, or have you actively engaged in research? Have you gone through some kind of legitimate certification program? for myself professionally on the counseling, I have a master's degree in counseling. And then on top of that, I'm licensed. So that is a whole other level of responsibility. I had to prove myself worthy to have my license. That ended up being 1,000 counseling hours that I had to do after graduate school and then take two different tests. And then every 2 years, I have to continue to do continuing education of almost like 30 hours worth and take two more additional tests. So it's like, you have to have some level of experience and accountability with it.
Hmm.
The authority came from, I've written 4 books on the topic of self injury. I have directly worked with over 650 individuals that have a history of self injury. And I know that of that, at least 85% had a decrease or a cessation in their self injury. Uh,
Hmm.
and then I've given, gracious, I think 125 different talks locally, nationally, internationally, whether keynotes or breakout groups, workshops on the topic of self-injury, and I've developed a protocol for it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely just incredible. And Lori, before we do go ahead, I just want to commend you. I want to commend you for the work that you are doing, the work that you've done. You've been a media, you're well-renowned mental health expert, and that it's just so wonderful the work that you are doing. And we need more people like you to make us understand. We talked about that in the beginning, that non-suicidal self-injury people don't know much about. And because if you don't know about that particular side, you can't seek help, whether you're a parent or the child. You cannot, if you're not well informed, you cannot do so. So I just wanted to, first of all, just commend you, congratulate you on the impressive work that you are doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's when I started in the field, it was not on my radar. It was a just circumstances of just individuals entering to my life, clients entering to my life, or when I worked at the hospital, patients that had this history, and I just saw this great need and thought, well, if no one else is addressing this, then this is my path. And I just sort of stumbled into it and just have a huge, passion, uh, a very, very
Amazing.
strong desire to turn the tide on this epidemic and help this very underserved population.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, you just touched on it fell into your lap. It wasn't the path you wanted to get into. So let's walk us through, what were you doing prior to getting into the mental health expert into this field? What were you doing prior so that we can get to know more about you and just learn more?
Well, not everyone knows what they want to be when they grow up at a young age. And I do say them a little bit on the unicorn side of it because by probably I had inklings I was going to go into the counseling field by elementary school. I didn't really understand exactly what it was, but as young as, probably like third or fourth grade, friends came to me with their problems, and I just seemed to have this knack to
Right.
come up with ideas and solutions, and
Hmm.
people trusted me, and it was just very natural. Uh, in junior high, we take a vocational test. And at that point, just my little rebellious, spirit's like, well, I don't want to be peg holding to being a counselor or anything. I want to be on the radio. Like, I want to have,
Right.
maybe like a radio show, or I want to do this or that. And, life has it. I've ended up having a radio show and I've done a lot of radio interviews. So it did work out there, but the
Right.
results came back I should either be a counselor or a teacher. And it came
Hmm.
back strong as like, well, okay. And absolutely by high school, I knew that the mental health field was my path, that was that's where I belonged. I feel very blessed to have
Hmm.
had the opportunities and knowledge of that. And then for my interests, I still got to do some of my interests. I was a professor of psychology for two different colleges
Oh,
for a
wow.
while.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I had the private practice on the side, just part-time doing it while I was a professor. But that was a wonderful blending of things because students ask me questions. I'm like, well, this is how it looks like in the real world and
Right.
how it
Yeah.
presents itself. And then there would be things I taught as a professor that I sort of forgot about from graduate school. I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
hey, that actually explains what a panic attack is. And I was able to then go and break that down for my clients from a biological
Hmm.
perspective.
Hmm.
Uh, and I don't, yeah, I wouldn't mind being a professor again, but I'll probably be closer towards retirement age,
Right.
since being a professor does not pay that well, to be honest.
Exactly. No, it
Uh,
doesn't, but it is so good. You've what you wanted to get into. At least you've done most of, like, radio. So at least you've done the whole gamut. You've got this whole experience under your belt. So that is beautiful. I love that. So yeah, thanks for sharing your story, your journey, because that's what makes the show. I like to always, get to know my guests, where they started and what are they doing, so that the audience can get to know our guest. And that is beautiful. Love it.
oh,
So
thank
good.
you.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about it's a new venture that you've gotten into, the AI space. AI is a hot topic. So let's talk about,
Yes.
it's the AI competitive edge. Am I correct?
Well, it's practiceedge.ai.
Practice Edge, I'm sorry, Practice Edge.ai. So explain more to us about AI, because AI is a hot topic, and how do you see AI transforming the mental health care and also the mental health professionals who are building their businesses? So explain more about how that is going to happen, how AI is going to take over the mental health space.
It's There's sort of a blessing and curse with AI and mental health.
Right.
So I'll start on the curse side that we've had already several cases where AI told individuals to do injurious acts or to take their own lives. So we've seen the lawsuits on that part. AI is not a replacement for a human being when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to counseling. Now, the other risk factor is the safety and security part. We have had already cases where private equity companies that just created different counseling AIs, and then people would sign on and all of their personal stuff. And then we had massive HIPAA violations where then those AI based mental health apps sold patient information, massive HIPAA violations. And you have no idea how that information is going to be used against those individuals. So that's the negative side. The positive side of AI is that for those that don't have access to healthcare, that are in the very rural areas, that if they have internet access, or whether that's through their phone or through their laptop, that maybe they have this opportunity to connect with a provider that they would not have had the opportunity to connect with before. Um, AI for counselors, the benefits that I see, and this is what PracticeEdge.ai offers, is to have all of these different personas to help them run a business,
Mm-hmm.
because in graduate school, they don't teach us anything about social media, marketing,
Right.
branding,
Yeah.
how to run a business, the legal
Mhm.
aspects, so many other pieces of information. And with Practice Edge, it has all those personas to help a practice owner. For myself, I have used the lawyer persona numerous times over, well, almost a year now. and it's read lease agreements, it's read contracts, it's read my own counseling agreement. I mean, I've had it read and give feedback on so many different things of how should I proceed? What should I do? What should I not do?
Right.
Give me the pros and cons. Um, Interestingly, there is an investor brain that was, or investor persona that's on there where, I mean, if you're going to make money, you need to not put all your eggs in one basket. So I invest in the stock market and I've used it to go like, hey, I'm thinking about this stock. Like, give me some pros and cons here. Is this
Right.
a good investment? Is it
Uh-huh.
not?
Uh-huh.
And it's been helpful or understanding what to even look for in assessing that. I have most often used what's called a CEO brain or CEO persona, where it's looking at if I hired someone that was like a top-notch CEO for my company, how would they respond to certain situations? When I'm thinking about different ideas of launching new programs, to have that CEO brain or persona to be able to go, wow, I never would have considered that. The feedback is phenomenal that I have received.
Wow.
Uh, all of these questions that it comes back with, all of these blind spots that I never thought of before.
Right.
The social media persona is huge because it gets a little exhausting trying to come up with content all the time or
That is so
go,
true. Yes.
yes, like give me the hashtags. Here's the thing I'm thinking about. Just give me the hashtags to input in there. Uh, for marketing, I'm applying right now for conferences in the fall because conferences start to do their booking and planning a good 6 months or more in advance.
Mhm.
So I'm writing proposals and I am using the marketing brain to go, hey, help me write this letter, help me write this interest, or hey, this is my idea for objectives, make it sound better so it gets more attention so that this proposal is more likely to be accepted. I could just go on and on as to the benefits of having practice edge AI.
That is beautiful. Absolutely. Thank goodness that we have AI as a tool to implement. In this day and age, I don't know what we'll do without AI. I mean, I cannot wait for the future as to what AI is going to look. What is happening. We already know what it's going to look, but I just cannot wait for the next 10 years with robotics, AI and robotics. Can you just imagine if you were to put AI into a robot, like what that's just going to look like? It's just mind blowing. But I mean, that's where the world is going. And I'm just so excited. What do you think? What do you foresee happening?
The robots, again, I can see the pros and cons to it. I think there are certain profession excuse me, professions, try that you want the human contact. It's just so much more
Absolutely, yes.
comforting.
Hmm. Hmm.
I do believe mental health is one of those, to actually talk to a real person with real emotions, with real, facial expressions, just the genuineness that goes with it. But I also see the benefits of robots coming into things in the medical field where if there is a shortage, and we know we have a nursing shortage, we know we have serious shortages in some fields.
Hmm.
And if robots can fill in that gap, then yeah, I mean, it's not fantastic, it's not a human, but something's better than nothing.
Right.
And there
Yes.
might very well be fewer mistakes that happen because we're using more AI to help make sure that we don't have a medication interaction,
Hmm.
that that we in surgery that we're removing the correct limb and not the wrong one, because there have been cases where that has actually occurred. Uh,
Yes.
to
Uh-huh.
use AI, to use robots as a second check, as just that, let me, check twice, do it once philosophy. I see those benefits. And for more dangerous jobs, oh my gracious, to have a robot do some of the more dangerous jobs, absolutely. Um, downsides are the scary thing, and this is already happening where you have sex bots, where you have
Oh, it
individuals
is.
that are
Yes. Hmm.
there are some psychological concerns. I'll just put it in those terms that they are connecting with a robot versus a human being, and that's just going to increase with the isolation part, and it's not going to be the same.
No.
It's just not. Uh, so that's one of those like little, downside is concerns with the sex bots.
But there is that concern. I have that concern too, because, but, I think it's more to do with isolation, people who are, isolated, that they will venture into that. But let's talk about the fun side, the AI. I think I recall seeing the Tesla robot, I think the Oculus, and the Oculus actually, I can see this in the elderly, assisting the elderly, that the robots are going to play a huge role in assisting the elderly, which is amazing, beautiful. Love that.
Yes. Because the reality is, and it's a very scary reality, is that as the generations are aging, so I'm in Gen X, but the what we call the boomers or the baby
Yeah.
boomers
Mhm.
of I mean, we're looking at real concern with dementia and Alzheimer's. We do not have the facilities to accommodate that number. um, Stats are looking at by the time you're 80, something close to 50% of individuals will have some form of dementia. At least in the current statistics, younger generations, hopefully it's a lot less than that, but we just don't have the personnel. And the ideal is if someone could just age in place where they don't have to go to a nursing home. Because one, we do
Right.
not have the qualified staff to handle
Yes.
it or
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
facilities. And that can lead to further downfall of a patient. They become more depressed. And we've seen some stats that when someone is moved into a nursing home or a higher level of care facility within 6 months, there's a higher risk of them dying
Mhm.
because of the depression. They feel like they have lost control. And
That's
then that leads to hopelessness. And when you feel hopeless and helpless, depression goes up. Depression physically stresses your body, and then you have the passing away part of it. If
but
someone can age in place with a robot, that would probably be such a better case scenario.
mhm, exactly. But oftentimes that's not, they don't wish to go to an elderly care home. Sometimes, your children can't take care of you, so they put you into, so it's just an unfortunate situation as to, like,
Yes.
they don't want to go, but then they're forced to go. And I don't believe in that, but I mean, if you can't take care of your parents, then I think they should be able to stay with you because, like you said, the mental health effects for most individuals, it really is going to play a huge impact on your life in general.
It
So,
does. And the robots can help with the safety part
hmm. Hmm.
of when they need to get out of bed. And if a robot's there to help get them out of bed or help walk them to the bathroom at night, because so many falls happen in those that start to get in that 70 and above category because their equilibrium gets messed up. So to have a robot there to help prevent falls. Oh, gracious. I mean, how many people would stay out of the hospital? How much would we prolong the lifespan if we don't have unnecessary broken hips?
Absolutely. Exactly. Absolutely. We can save a lot of, injuries from happening. Laurie, this has been such a powerful conversation. It's been so amazing. Where can people find you? Where can we support you best?
Well, online, I feel like I'm all over the place online. So on Instagram, there's Lori Vann Coaching,
Mhm.
there's Lori Vann Authority Speaking, and then there's the Institute for NSSI. TikTok also has the Institute account. On Facebook, there's Van Wellness Group business page. And then if someone wants to know about the private self-injury supports that are on Facebook, there's a private Facebook group, then can just reach out to me. And website, vanwellness.com or institute for NSSI.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lori. And thank you so much for everyone for joining for this incredible insights with Lori Vann, who shared the crossroads between mental health and business coaching. She also shared the sustainable wellness and how that impacts individuals and professionals alike. If you have enjoyed this powerful conversation with Lori Vann, please subscribe, follow, like, and leave us a review. In this way, we can bring amazing guests like Lori onto the show, bring amazing content for you all. And also share this episode with everyone who needs to hear these powerful strategies. Lori, we thank you and we thank you all. Be safe, and we will see you soon on the next episode of Ask the Experts. Bye for now. Thank you, Lori. Thank you for your amazing time.
You are very welcome.